Welcome back to RKD Group Chat, where we share the stories of individuals working in the nonprofit space. This episode features my conversation with Jane Flower, a youth outreach specialist at Guide Dogs for the Blind. Jane has worked in the nonprofit industry for more than 2 decades and uses her lived experience as a person with vision loss and her journey as a Guide Dogs for the Blind client to connect with young people going through a similar path. Her story is incredible, and there is so much heart and passion behind why she does what she does. And I know you'll feel that as you hear her share her journey. Let's dive in.
Yeah, sure. It probably wasn't a traditional path. I had graduated from college and did not have a job, and I am visually impaired myself. And I was taking some classes as an adult. I never learned to read and write Braille, and so I'm like, I'm just going to take classes and learn how to read and write Braille. And while I was in line at the organization getting lunch, someone mentioned there was a job opening at a nonprofit called the Dale McIntosh Center in Southern California, working with older adults who are visually impaired. And I'm like, I could do that. I have some lived experience. And so I reached out and applied for that job, and I was hired and, spent almost 13 years there at the Dale McIntosh Center working under a federally funded program called OIB, Older Individuals Who Are Blind. And I did home visits with older adults who were experiencing vision loss for the first time and helped them really learn how to, live with vision loss. So just daily activities, everything from managing money, dialing the phone. I mean, this was even almost just cell phones were barely a thing back then. Telling time, all those just daily things that somebody needs to be able to manage, and kind of fell in love with that population in older adults. And I went back to school and got a master's in gerontology. And while I was wrapping up that degree, a job opened up at Guide Dogs for the Blind, and I have had guide dogs from this organization. I got my first dog in 1995, and I was working my second dog at that time. And jobs just never opened up there. And it was in the outreach department. And I had done so much outreach at my previous job at Dale McIntosh Center. And it would mean a move to Northern California for me. But it was just an organization, of course, so near and dear to my heart that I'm like, I'm just going to apply for this job, even though it's not specifically in gerontology, but our average age of clients are 55. And so I applied and got the job and moved to Northern California, where I've been ever since. And now working my third guide dog from that organization.
Like you just heard her mention, and like so many I've interviewed on this podcast have mentioned before her, Jane didn't necessarily set out to work in nonprofit, but she fell in love with the idea of helping people. And the passion she feels for her job in this industry is so evident when you hear her talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I especially the nonprofits I've worked in, it's about helping people, right? Especially charities like Guide Dogs for the Blind and Dale McIntosh Center. They both were organizations set up to help people with disabilities. Guide Dogs is, geared more towards just vision loss, where Dale McIntosh Center was an organization that helped people with all disabilities, even though I worked strictly in vision loss. But it takes a special person to work in a nonprofit. I think that, funding is always a concern, and just the type of people I think too that work in nonprofits, the passion and compassion they have for what they're doing is just so evident. I saw it for sure at Dale McIntosh Center, and I definitely see it at Guide Dogs for the Blind. Everybody that's there is working so hard and towards the mission of our organization, and just, it is a testament to our executive team, and Chris Benninger, our CEO, is really, reminding everybody all the time what our mission is and to stay mission focused. And I think it helps keep you motivated too at the end of the day when you have a really hard work day or, stressful month or week or whatever, just keeping that at our forefront and our focus, kind of helps people move along. And it's cool at Guide Dogs because, we always talk about both sides of the harness, because we have our clients that we serve, and we're not serving animals, but in a way we are, because we are breeding all these dogs that we need to care for as well. And so it's a really unique place to work. You have both of those things that we're working to help and make sure everybody's happy and safe and, all of those things. So it's great.
In her role at the Dale McIntosh Center, her focus was on outreach for older adults. But as she transitioned into her role at Guide Dogs for the Blind, her new focus was on youth. I was curious to learn a little bit more about some of the similarities and differences between serving the two different age groups.
Yeah, very much so. Because I felt like the older adults I was working with, I was really helping to educate them so much on, things they were not knowledgeable about. And the youth that I work with, they've all been, mostly blind since birth, and they probably know more than I do about technology. And I find that they're educating me a lot as well. And just the energy level, right? And also just, you also have the parents to contend with as well. And it's one of my favorite parts of the job too, is connecting with the parents, her trying to help their kids get on the right path and be successful, especially, entering into the world, as young adults with vision loss, and how are they going to be successful, and how are they going to manage all of the things they're going to need to do and know. But with, so much advancements in technology nowadays, I feel like everybody's more on an even playing field, which is fantastic. And also the focus of where a lot of government programs and educational programs have changed so much, especially for the low vision community, really working more on transitioning and helping kids be successful in the workforce, as opposed to kind of grouping everybody. At least when I was growing up back in the day, there was no focus on helping that transition, and placements were made more, well, just, you can work in a call center, right? And it's like, people that are blind can just, answer the phones, and it's just not true. Everybody with vision loss can do anything they want to do. They just have to figure out different ways to do it. And so just really, digging in with those kids and the parents, and helping them, make those steps into transition into adulthood.
I wanted to pause here and talk a little bit more about the technology piece that Jane mentioned in her previous clip. Technology advancements have played a huge role not only in Jane's personal experience, but also in the resources available to the youth she's working with, making things so much more accessible in their day-to-day lives.
I look back, throughout my school history, and, when I was in school, especially in college, the first time, I would sit in the classroom with nothing. I didn't have technology that I knew how to use, and I couldn't see to read or write in the classroom. Somebody would take notes, and I was just sitting and listening. I wasn't really an active participant in my education, I felt like. And when I went back to graduate school, and I'm in graduate school again, everything's available. Educating the public, and especially in the school environment, professors they have to give work ahead of time to students with disabilities. So you have things ahead of time so you can review and be more prepared. Computers nowadays, we use something called JAWS. It's a screen reading program. So I have access to everything on the computer using the keyboard. It's just, I don't use a mouse. Everything talks to me. And of course the iPhone, right? Being able to, look at pictures. That's one thing I lost when my vision has deteriorated. I can't see pictures anymore. And there's these great apps now that you can send the picture to, and it describes the picture in such detail. And, just all those things. And movies, going to the movies, there's audio description that will describe what's happening in the movie. So it's made things that were sort of lost to us brought it back again. I still think there's still a lot of education that needs to be done around employment for people who are blind or visually impaired. Employers, if people aren't familiar with disability or what is available, people might wonder, how does somebody with blind work? If somebody goes for an interview, they may just have those assumptions, that they can't do the job. And maybe that person won't even get the interview, where in fact, there's so many tools now available to make all kinds of applications accessible, emails accessible, the internet's accessible, Microsoft, Office, all those things are accessible. But it's just, giving people the opportunity to show what they can do. And I sometimes think people with disabilities are better employees, because they know once they get a job, that was probably not an easy job to get. And they probably work a lot harder too at the end, just because they need to show that I can do this job, right? And I can be successful and I'm smart enough, and to do the job. I just need the right things in place to be able to do my job. And it's still a lot of educating, for people, because the blindness is a low incidence disability. I mean, most people I come in contact, I've never even met somebody who's visually impaired. And so, I can imagine, people wondering, well, how do you do if you can't see, right? It's being able to see that 85% of everything we do is visual. And so how does somebody do anything if they can't see? But, you just learn new and different ways to do things, and you can pretty much do anything.
Going back to her more than 11 years, specifically at Guide Dogs for the Blind, Jane and I spent some time discussing their mission, what about it is so close to her heart, and why she has chosen to serve there for the last decade.
Oh, gosh. I mean, I think all of those things still stand true. It's an interesting position to be in, being a client and an employee here, because you see both sides. But yeah, I mean, really, initially, I think it was just because of all the people that I encountered before I started working there that I came in contact with because I had dogs. So all the instructors and the field managers that would come out and help me when I worked in the field, it was just, there was such a connection there with all those people. And it's like, God, what a really cool place to work. I would just love to work there. And, and I think now that I've been here and being on the other side of it, that all still holds true. I mean, just the quality of people that are here, and the interactions now with the clients too that I get to work with, or potential clients as well. And just kind of bring them into, the fold, if you will, of the mission. And, and I love animals. I mean, when I got my first dog, I didn't know anything about dogs. I liked them, but I really didn't know anything about them. And, oh man, am I a dog lover now? And I will never not have a dog in my life. If someday comes and I can't have a guide dog, I will still always have a dog. And, so, I mean, that was for sure kind of a draw too, but I didn't know it at the time, I think. But now looking back, it's like, wow. Yeah.
So for those who may not be familiar with the organization, I also asked Jane to share a little bit more about Guide Dogs for the Blind's work.
Yeah, Guide Dogs for the Blind, we've been around 82 years. So we've been around a really long, long time. And, our mission is simple. It's to connect people, dogs, and community. And through our mission, we are connecting people with obviously well-trained guide dogs. And we also have two other programs, which is great. We have a Canine Buddy program for people who are visually impaired or blind, or children who may not qualify quite yet because of their age, who are blind. We will gift a dog to them so they can have just a pet or a companion. And I love this too, because we have clients that have gotten guide dogs from us their entire life. And, maybe they've gotten to an age where working a guide dog is too much, but we can still give them a dog to have that companionship because they've had a dog their whole life. And then we're also helping with, there's such a shortage across the country with services for people who are blind, orientation and mobility training. I mean, that's what people need to learn to be able to be mobile and get out of their house and be out in the community and be independent and have a job. And the services are so extremely lacking in that service. People cannot get services, or they're getting very, very minimal services. And so we also have an orientation and mobility immersion program now where we're helping fill that gap, and people can come and get orientation and mobility enhanced training from us. Even if if their goal is not even a dog, but they just need that training, we can do that. But we find people coming through that, and then they realize maybe they do want a dog. And so, we're just trying to meet the needs of the blindness community in many different ways, and meeting people where they're at, and also helping them throughout their entire life as well. And so I'm just super proud of this organization. And we have wonderful donors. We could not do what we do without our donors, and our volunteers, our thousands of volunteers through all of our puppy raising programs who help raise the puppies, get ready to come in for training, and just all of our on-campus volunteers. We can't do what we do without all of those people. And so, if you don't know about our services and want to learn more, our website is just full of information and great resources at guidedogs.com. So I encourage people to check it out. If nothing more, just to educate yourself about blindness if you don't know anything about vision impairment, and look at we have some great videos and client stories that are just so encouraging and so wonderful. So I just really encourage people to go to the website and look at all those great things that we have on there.
As both a client and an employee, Jane's experience and depth of knowledge provides her with a unique connector when she's working with both kids and their parents.
It does. I mean, I think because I have the lived experience, when somebody's calling on the phone just to get general information, a lot of times when I'm talking to them, they don't know I'm visually impaired at first. And they'll start, sharing things about them. And I said, oh, yeah, I understand I'm visually impaired. And it's like, oh, okay, somebody gets it, right? And so I have that different perspective too. And so I'm able probably to, I don't know, explain things in a different way, maybe because I do have the lived experience, maybe as opposed to somebody that is on staff that's sighted. I mean, they definitely understand, but they don't have the little lived experience. So it's a little bit different in that way. And I can empathize too, especially when somebody's dog is maybe facing retirement, or their dog has passed away. I mean, I've had all those experiences as well. And so, that empathy piece for sure is huge here because, having a guide dog, that connection with the dog, unless you've had a guide dog, that bond and that connection is not something you can explain. And when you have to retire them, it's almost like, in a way, sort of letting them go and getting a divorce. And I felt guilty the first time. I'm like, I'm telling this dog it's not good enough anymore, which it really isn't that, but you do feel guilty in a way because they love it so much. So, and you want to do so right by them. And so that piece is really hard. And of course, dogs don't live long enough, and having to say goodbye to a dog and let one go is it's incredibly, incredibly painful and difficult. And so, being able to connect with people in that way, as well, I think it's very unique, and I'm so blessed that I'm able to do that.
In her tenure at Guide Dogs for the Blind, Jane has had the opportunity to connect with people all across the country and has many memorable moments, including her role running a summer camp.
I get to do all kinds of travel for work. And so I've traveling is, it's gotten harder and more tiring over the years, but just meeting all kinds of people out throughout the country, that normally I wouldn't have gotten to meet. I think that's been amazing. Working just with the guide dog staff, I think, and learning all different parts of the organization. In my position in outreach, I really do get to, because I have to know every piece of the organization in order to talk about it when I'm out and about. So that's been really great that I really have gotten that exposure to every piece, and then also getting to know all the different people in the organization. And I love our clients, and I love, I run a summer camp program for youth who are blind, and those programs it's been great. And I think the highlights for me through that program, and also an on-campus workshop that I provide, in both of those on-campus workshops and also the camp program, everybody gets to experience a walk with a guide dog for the first time. And you can just hear the smiles on everybody's faces. It's just, and people are just on cloud nine. And usually that experience seals the deal for people. They're like, oh man, I wasn't sure this is what I wanted to do, but now that I've walked with this dog, I think this is the direction I want to go in terms of what I want to use for my mobility to be able to get around. And I think those moments are definitely the highlights for me. And then seeing that come full circle in those individuals actually applying and coming in and getting a dog, and know that I had a piece in making that happen for them, is a really good feeling.
Her day-to-day as a youth outreach specialist ranges from travel to education to general interactions with kids and their parents.
Yeah, I think, when I'm not traveling, obviously I'm in the office, and then kind of making those types of things happen. So figuring out what's out there, what's happening out in the community, what conferences are happening, what presentations or groups of people are there that I can speak to. And in our department right now, we're really going to start focusing on some educational pieces too for example, ophthalmologists.